My name is Christopher Pinkerton, and when I first began digging into what was happening here in Florida, I was still in Oregon working from a distance, connecting the dots between property records, legislative histories, and the scattered cries for help that somehow reached my ears. At first I thought this could be done remotely, but the deeper I went, the more I realized the patterns I was uncovering weren't isolated errors or misunderstandings. They were deliberate, coordinated acts of exploitation. So I took it to God in prayer, and I asked him plainly, should I go? And he answered, not in a whisper, but with a clarity I couldn't deny. He said, I hear them, and you hear them too. Go, I am with you. And from that moment there was no hesitation. I drove across the country with one purpose, to stand in the places where this corruption hides, to look the perpetrators in the eye, and to gather the evidence they thought could never be traced. And in just 1 month of being here on the ground, after already having a month's worth of investigative work behind me, what I have uncovered is staggering. I have seen the concealed loans, multi-million-dollar debts hidden from the very people forced to pay for them. I have seen inflated insurance premiums engineered to launder money through compliant carriers. I have seen contracts awarded to insider companies without bids, padded with fraudulent change orders, and paid through reserve accounts that were unlawfully depleted. I have seen governing documents rewritten without owner approval, stripping residents of their rights and consolidating control into the hands of a few. I have seen court records manipulated, enforcement agencies captured, and legislative language tailored to protect the guilty while silencing the victims. And the victims are not just the ones who speak out. They are the silent ones too, the elderly who live alone and can't navigate the legal maze you've built around them, the fixed income retirees who go without basic needs because their association fees have doubled to cover debts they never approved, the families driven into foreclosure over fees they never owed, the whistleblowers ostracized and smeared for daring to resist. Your victims, they're in the tens of thousands, and the scale of your crimes is not confined to one building, one neighborhood, or even one county. It's woven in the fabric of a statewide enterprise, an enterprise that uses attorneys, management companies, lobbyists, and even legislators as pieces on the board, each moving in concert to protect the scheme and crush resistance. I've even pieced together your legislative racketeering bill by bill, statute by statute. I've tracked the House bills and the Senate bills that you thought no one would ever connect. I wanted to know why legitimate complaints backed by evidence were being stonewalled while regulatory agencies would acknowledge receipt then vanish into silence. Why victims were being sent in circles while perpetrators kept their seats, their titles, and their profits. It took time. Long hours of reading legislative history, cross-referencing voting records, and following the money trails that ran through campaign donations, political committees, and lobbying disclosures. I compared the language in the statutes before and after your amendments, and saw exactly how you stripped away rights and built walls around your enterprise. And when I found the connections, I understood why the system never moved against you. You built it not to. You wrote the rules. You wrote the rules to protect yourselves. You embedded your own immunity into the very laws that you were supposed to hold you accountable. You turned the legislative processes into a laundering machine for power, money, and impunity. And yet, even in the middle of all this complexity, when the web seemed too tangled to ever unravel, God helped me out just like he said he would. And I kept digging. I dug deeper, not just into properties and statutes, but into the machinery of state power itself. I investigated how many executive orders Governor DeSantis has issued, and more importantly, how many of them were sealed from public view. And when I lined them up chronologically, patterns began to emerge. Patterns most people would never notice unless they were looking for the intersection of law, politics, and profit. Among those patterns, one stood out like a flashing beacon. The reassignment of judges, not one or two, but a systematic reshuffling that, when mapped against the timelines of certain cases and legislative changes, showed clear signs of orchestration. These weren't random administrative moves. They were surgical, deliberate, and timed to protect a network. Your network. The further back I went, the more it became clear. This wasn't just a DeSantis-era maneuver. No. The roots stretched back to when Rick Scott was governor, 2 full terms in which his hands is traceable in key legislative changes that directly touch the very industry I'm investigating. Statutes were altered, oversight powers were diluted, and the enforcement teeth were pulled, all while the players in this enterprise grew richer and more untouchable. This is the blueprint of a long game, one that blends legislative racketeering with judicial positioning. So the rules and the referees are both under the control of the same network. And when you control both the law and the people who interpret it, you don't just win individual cases. You own the system itself. I have gathered your paper trails, your signatures, your meeting minutes, your financial ledgers. I have witnesses ready to speak, sworn statements ready to be filed, and forensic records that show exactly how the money moved. I have pieced together the internal communications you thought no one would ever see, and I know the properties you gutted. I know the ones you leveraged, and I know the ones you sacrificed to keep this enterprise of yours afloat. Call me an outsider if it makes you feel safer, but understand this. I am on the inside now. Inside the walls of your operation, inside the communities you thought you were controlling, inside the hearts of the people you have wronged, who now know that they are not alone. I came because God told me to. He told me he hears them, and I hear them too, because I hear them every day. I'm not going to stop. I'm not going to stop until the weight of what you've sown comes down upon you.